much. Let's talk coalitions and kingmakers. The parties of the city of Joburg will no doubt be in some horse trading discussions this morning.
There will be. The key, I think, among them will be Ekurhuleni, will be city of Joburg, and also city of Tshwane. But I think what is critical and what we, I think, need to focus on is not so much who will be, but what will they be offering. Because I think we should learn from what happened last time, where it's almost as though they do these deals in the dark and then we are expected to get the end product. I think we really need to sit to them to say, listen, what are your principles? What are you willing to work on? What are you willing not to work on? And actually hold them to that.
Both the ANC and the DA have said that they're willing to work with Action SA in Joburg. Your thoughts on that? Who's going to sort of get the hearts and minds together of Herman Mashaba?
I think Herman, and we're just basing it on how he ran the election, I think he'll be open to speaking with the DA, but I think he'll want something big in return, i.e. being the mayor. Now, I think speaking to the ANC is a bit more tricky because his principles are very diametrically opposed to some of the positions that the ANC has taken. So that, I think, will be very interesting to see how they smooth out the edges. It's one thing to talk, it's a whole other thing to actually say, listen, this is what we're basing these talks on.
Looking at the overall leadership across the country, how is the ANC looking at this stage?
Oh, it's bleeding. It's a clear message from voters, and I want to add non-voters, that listen, it's not that we don't like you, it's just that we don't like you in this current format. And I think that speaks more loudly than anything else. And I think it's a positive trend because it shows that the ANC can bleed and that people can now start to imagine a South Africa without the ANC. The only negative, and I think we have to harp on about this, is the only thing really stopping the ANC from total irrelevance is that there is no quality opposition. Now, here I'm speaking about an opposition that's able to muster, the ambitions of youth, fix the economy, speak about mega infrastructure in municipal governance, and be able to coalesce around that and make that the central theme of their message. And until such an opposition really exists, South Africans will either wax and wane, they'll either choose to stay at home, they'll experiment with other parties. But I think it really is upon the opposition to actually look back and say, listen, how did we not be able to keep the ANC out of coalitions and out of the current power in many municipalities? Yes, they might be below 50, but I always say the aim is not to keep the ANC out of government. The aim is to run a government which shows South Africans that there is an alternative to the ANC at local government. And I think many of the opposition parties, especially the ones we term the traditional ones, the DA and the EFF, did not do such a good job on that.
I was going to ask you about that next. Did the DA fail to harness votes from a bleeding ANC or a wounded ANC?
Massively, because they should have been next in line. And if you look at how they structured themselves, their message, and I call it's a DA model, which is where we govern, it's better. What it's simply asking is to say, listen, you keep harping on about Cape Town, this great place, you keep harping on about the Midvaal, but we're beginning to see that this model doesn't travel across very multicultural, multi-layered cities. And I think that's the problem for the DA. If they cannot show themselves to really make sure that their model works in the new municipality they got in KZN, questions will then always be asked to say, but listen, Cape Town, beautiful place, we all love it, but it seems to only work for a certain few populations. What about the township areas, poor areas? Because the rest of South Africa actually looks a bit more like Langa and Khayelitsha. And if the DA is not able to make sure the model works for people in those areas, it really will not work anywhere else in South Africa. Therefore, it'll just be a unique model for Cape Town, but it's not really going to bring the Republic anywhere.
Quick look, TK, at KZN, IFP charging in like an elephant.
Is little elephants. We can say the IFP is back. And the key question is, why are they back? And again, it really just shows you that, listen, at least the good thing about people in KZN that they did have an experience of the IFP before the ANC. So it's actually quite an interesting message, because as people have said, listen, we've tried the ANC, but clearly there's a lot going on in that house, and they're going back to the IFP. But here's a key thing. Can the IFP, which seems to be going in a direction of changing leadership, getting a bit younger, and also starting to, own up to some of the messes which they were involved in, can they now translate this into saying, listen, in the next 5 years, can we now get closer to places like Maritzburg? Can we get closer to places like eThekwini? Because the minute they're able to do that and challenge the ANC on the KZN front, that's a massive win for them. We have to remember some of the largest voting population blocks in terms of youth and other demographics are actually in KZN. So for them to be able to do this in the next 5 to 10 years, as in totally get KZN, and then actually be able to say, listen, can you go to places like the Eastern Cape? can you grow in Gauteng? That for me could maybe spell something different and new for South Africans. But the IFP needs to move past some of its older, let's say, some of the older monikers and actually say, listen, we are a party that is purely centrist. We're a party for the economy, and we're a party for all South Africans. Yes, we're based in KZN, and that is our strong leaning, but it doesn't mean we exclude other South Africans from this vision which we're putting forward.